Hello and welcome back to Papa B's Old Time Repair and Restoration. I'm Mike, and today we're going to get back on to the DI project. And in the last video, we got the differential and the reverse idler put in the bottom of the case. So today we're going to make an attempt to get the sliding gear shaft, the shift gears, the shifter forks, the shifter shaft assembly, all of that put in, get it adjusted, get it finished up so we can move on to the next phase of our project. If we have time, we'll go ahead and we'll start working on the PTO drive shift assembly as well. So follow along and let's see what happens. This morning we're going to get started on putting the sliding gear shaft assembly back into the tractor. I've got some stuff laid out here. First of all, I've got my bag of bolts. It says transmission sliding shaft, and it says a bearing retainer and the shifter shaft locking bolts and the detents and everything is all in this bag. So we'll remove what we need to get that done. Here's the bearing quill that houses the bearing beneath the reduction gear. I saved a representative of the bearing, and we were able to source those off of eBay. So we've got those ready to go. So right now it looks like that I need to do some cleaning up on some of these assorted parts. I need to press this old bearing off, get the key cleaned up, get the reduction gear cleaned up, and then we'll be ready to start back together. Okay, looks like we've got everything cleaned up. The last thing I want to do before I start reassembling this is I want to make sure that the gears will slide on and off of these shafts good without any issues. And it looks like that at least that one will. There we go. There's not any real noticeable wear marks on the splines, so I think we're in good shape. So we've got everything bead blasted, so it looks like we're ready to start together with the sliding shaft assembly. going to try to use this chain hoist to help hold this shaft up while I put it in. I'm going to have to slide the transmission gears on as I go. So this way, going to use this kind of like a third arm, I guess. Oh yeah, that's not bad. Go ahead and wipe this out. As I said before, I've chased the holes. There's a little bit of a burr right there, but it'll be fine. And there's no gasket right there, according to the book. So I'm going to pull this back just a hair, line up with my hoist. There we go. And sure does help having that on a cart. There, maybe something about like that. Okay, I'm going to start this in. And I'm going to let that down just a hair. I apologize ahead of time because my hands are going to get in the way. But the first thing that we need to put on is this reverse and first gear. Sliding gear. And of course, naturally, it will not even make an attempt. There we go. Had to slide it out in the light to kind of get that in. And the second gear has got to go on the opposite side over here, and that will be this one right here. And again, I apologize, but it's gonna have to go sliding right in here, and we'll bring the I'm gonna try to, there we go. Down just a hair, maybe will help me. I'll pull the light out to where I can see over here on the other side. All right, and alright, there we go. That's all we needed, was just a little nudge. Okay. That should be how we need to go. I'm going to raise this just a little bit. There, okay. So we're started right there. Hopefully that you can see this gear is made to where it can shift either to the this gear or down to the reverse pinion. And then of course this one will move back and forth between this gear and this gear. So I'm going to go ahead and get these bolts started over here on this quill. And that may be all we get done for today. It's almost lunchtime. I'd like to get this sucked up. I won't get it safety wired today, but we'll get that at least tightened up. And we'll have to put the outside nut on the reduction gear as well. As I said, or as I did on the differential bearing quill, I am putting new lock washers on these bolts. I just think it's a good idea. It doesn't cost that much. I buy them in bulk from McMaster, and so I just had too many of them. Once they've been in there for 90 years, close to it, you loosen the tension off of them and then tighten them back down. A lot of times they will just fracture. So you get these bolts in. Now, since this bearing housing is not open to the outside, but it's open inside the reduction gear case, there was no gasket right here, and I'm not using any sealant on the bolts. So we'll get rid of this right here. Okay, pull this back out of the way. There we go. Go ahead and push that on in and get this snugged up. We will have to safety wire this back in here, but I will do that when we get towards the end. With the weight of those gears hanging on that shaft and us not having the other bearing in the other side, it tends to want to sag, and so this quill is binding up a little bit, but we're pretty close to having it together. There it goes. Yeah. All right, we made it. Go ahead. And you can't see, but right down here below, the bottom of the quill is covering that reverse pinion shaft, keeping it in. All right, we'll get this tightened up and move on to the next step. Ran into something that worked pretty neat. This is an offset 3/4, and I bought this off of a tool wagon at one of the threshing shows here a year ago, and I had no real need for it, but you know, that thing worked just slick as it can be going around there, and I was able to go ahead and torque those bolts. So yeah, you see stuff like that, pick it up, you never know. If you'll remember, quite a while back when I first took this sliding gear shaft out, I had a heck of a time with this bearing. I've got this bearing started now, so I'm going to go ahead and make an attempt to tap that on. I've got a brass punch. Seems to be moving. Just is not my favorite way of installing bearings. But we are going, we're halfway on. It's a slip fit in the housing. It's just a little bit snug on the shaft. We'll get that to the point that this snap ring will go on, and we'll have this put together. Well, we're on. Full disclosure, I had to get a bigger hammer and a bigger punch. So consequently, I wasn't able to drive that on with my brass punch, but I'll see if I can show you that punch right there and the hammer. So, but it went right on, and it seems to be rolling just fine. So I'm gonna stick this snap ring on. If it doesn't go flying. There we go. Finally. We did. I said we did. Look. Yep. We are there. Okay. Excellent. I think I'm going to cover this up and call it a day. Over here on the table, I've got the parts laid out for the shifter assembly for the main transmission. This right here is the first and reverse shifting fork. This is second, third speed shifting fork. Here's your shifter fork shaft, and you can see the detent marks in there, and that's what these are for. This is the detent plug with the spring. They fit right in these towers here, and that's what positively locates the shifter in position on the shifter shaft. Got a couple of cotter keys which go here on the top of the shifting fork on the detent tower, and then there's also a hole for safety wire. So we've got these things ready to install. I've got a couple of set screws. One of them is for this shaft. One of them is for the shifter over on the PTO drive assembly. And we will do that after we get this one done. So let's get started putting this in the case. Okay, the first thing I'm going to do is slip the shift forks in to the respective gears, and I'm just going to let them lay for the time being. Next, we'll position the reduction gear, and we'll bring the shifter shaft in from the reduction gear side, and then we'll just pick these up and slip them on. I'm going to get the shaft in as close to position as I can. I think we're started through the other side of the case hole. The shifter shaft has two things that hold it in position. The first piece is this threaded spacer with a hole through it. This is the bolt that I had in the end of the shaft as I was tapping it through the case. So the threaded hole that I showed you in the last scene, that's where this goes. And it screws right into the side of the case, and I'll bring you around and show you after I have it in there. The second thing that holds this shaft in position is a set screw that goes right there in that hole. There's a flat on that shaft, so we will lock it down with that. But the first thing we need to do is adjust the placement of the shifter forks in relationship to neutral and on the gears. So we'll do that. I'm dropping the detents down through the towers on the forks. I'm watching that detent as I move the shift fork from side to side on that, and I can see it fall into the neutral position. So I will temporarily get a screwdriver and I will push that down and key that spring into position, do the same thing on the other, and then we can adjust the position of our shaft. It's very crowded right here, so I'm going to try to be careful and not launch a spring like that just almost did right there. There we go. Got one side of it. Okay, there's one. Now the other one I will drop. I'm going to take my light. Hopefully I won't blow you out, but it should be somewhere right in about that position. You'll know for sure. Just a little bit. Well, that's not good. Spring down in the bottom of the case. There we did. Whew! It's kind of difficult. Bend you down just a little bit right there. Okay, we've got that locked on the shaft in the neutral position. So now I'm going to adjust the shaft side to side, try to get it lined up, and then we'll slip it into each gear and see how the gears line up. I'm moving the shifter shaft to the left. It was rubbing on the differential gear. The second and third speed gear was rubbing on the differential gear when it was in neutral. So I'm going to leave it right there. I might go just a little further. Wished I hadn't done that. That was just a bolt that I had to maybe assist. I don't see the bolt, but we will look for it here shortly. Oh no, that was the bolt. Keep the to lock this in place. Let's see how I'm going to do that. Here we go. Okay. Okay, that's reverse. Reaching down, we're not quite lined up. Let me see how first looks. That's one thing that I've figured out. I've got to lock that down with the bolt. Oh yeah, we have slid way over. Well guys, it's been a few days. In fact, it's been over a week since I've last touched the DI. And if you remember in the last clip, I had just dropped the bolt down into the transmission case. And that was the bolt that locked the shifter shaft to the adjustment bushing in the side of the case. And to be honest, it took me about 30 minutes to figure out where that bolt had ended up, and I finally found it. And between the difficulty of getting you all in there to show you what I'm doing and getting the gears and everything aligned, I just went ahead and I finished it up. So I'm going to show you what I ended up doing on the shifter shaft alignment and what I found, and we'll go from there. I was trying to align the gears on the sliding gear shaft with the differential and the reverse gears, and then of course second, third over here. And I kept moving it back and forth, and whenever I would get this gear set lined up pretty well, I was having difficulty with clearance over here between the this gear and the differential gears. When I would have this one lined up like I thought I had it, this gear set over here was actually making contact with the differential case. Well, not with the differential case, but with the differential gear. So what I finally discovered just by looking is the wear patterns on the gear. And I'm not sure if you can see that very well, but I got to looking at the wear patterns on the gear and discovered that the gears were never lined up perfectly from the factory. There you can kind of see where that wear pattern on this big differential gear kind of ends. So I aligned these gears up with the wear pattern and was actually pretty pleased at how it came out. The wear patterns pretty well match from side to side like they were originally, and I've shifted this into each gear, rolled it through. I don't have any interference, and it all has seemed to work out well. Now while I was at it, after I got that aligned, I locked down the bolt, which that if you can see it right there, I'll bring you down here. That is it right there. That is the bolt that I dropped in the transmission case. And to kind of recap, that outside bushing with the slot in it is a threaded bushing that threads into the case, and it moves the shaft in and out, and once you have your position like you want it, you lock it down with that cap screw, and that keeps the bushing from rotating. Now there's another lock on that shifter shaft, but I'll show you those in a minute. But I've got that locked down like I need it. That camera is not, there we go, kind of focused there. And I've also got the bearing quill bolts safety wired on both sides of the quill. So I've got that done. And after I was satisfied with the alignment, I went ahead and I'm trying to get that light where you can see. I went ahead and locked down the shifter shaft. That square-headed bolt back there with the jam nut, that locks down on the flat on the shifter shaft, and then it's safety wired like that. And then the detent plungers and springs have new cotter keys to hold that in, hold that spring in place, and then they are safety wired over the top of the cotter keys. So I've got that one finished, got this one finished, and I also have the safety wire on the PTO shifter shaft locked down and safety wired as well. It was just being so difficult to try to get you guys in there to see what I was doing, and we're dealing with a very small area to work, and by the time I got my hands and my head and the camera and everything stuck in there, I just felt it was better to go ahead and finish it up and then bring you back and show you what I found. So with that, we'll move on and I'll show you a trick that I figured out while installing the PTO shifter shaft. Alright, we're over here at the shift gear for the PTO drive, and right here is the sliding shaft that this shifter fork operates on, and you saw that it moves on to the interior of the transmission case and was locked down by that square-headed bolt in the jam nut. So as you can see, the PTO engagement slides on this outer end of the sliding gear shaft, moves in and out right there to engage and disengage the PTO. But the problem that I had was, if you can see this bulge right here in this shifter fork, that is the cavity that holds the spring and the detent ball inside of that fork. And as you can see, there is no way that you can get your fingers in there to depress that ball and get the shaft started and make it all come together. Now I'm sure there's somebody out there that probably could, but with me and my kind of oversized fat fingers, it was really difficult. So I'll show you what I came up with. Hopefully it will help somebody else down the road. This little piece right here ended up being a lifesaver. And right now I'm going to insert a still picture of that shifting fork in the vise, and I'll show you how I use this. This is nothing more than a piece of 1/2-inch EMT electrical conduit, about 1 inch long, and I'll show you what I did with it. You saw the piece of EMT inserted into this cavity of the shifting fork. And this shifting shaft is tapered on the far end, the end that goes into the transmission. And this shaft was just big enough and had the right amount of taper on it that when you started it through here, it just pushed that piece of EMT right on through, kept the detent ball in place, and it all went together really, really smooth. So I was really glad for that. Something I figured out, and I'm sure other people have good ideas on how to do this too, but I'm just sharing what I found on this one. Okay, one final thought on this PTO drive and the shifting assembly. We have a shaft that sticks up at the top there, and if you're familiar with these D's at all, you'll know, according to the parts book, that it has a felt washer and also a steel washer on top of that to seal that shaft. Well, I did some measuring and I figured out that a National 471-554 lip seal fits perfectly on the shaft and the housing bore, so I ended up going back with that. And I know it's not 100% original, but I am trying to keep these oil leaks to a minimum, so I'm going to try everything that I can to do that. So just a hint, if you're having trouble finding that felt washer, again, it's a National 471-554, and it fits perfectly. And as a side note to all the good things that we've gotten done today, the crankshaft is back from the crankshaft shop, and I have not unwrapped it, but from what I can see and from what they told me, I think it's in pretty good shape. So that's exciting. One more piece of the puzzle is back home. Well, we really made some good progress on the old DI this round. I was really glad to get this sliding gear assembly, all the bearings, the gears, the forks, the shifter shafts, everything in, adjusted, and safety wired back together. I was also glad to get the shifter mechanism for the PTO drive installed. We're not quite ready to put that into place yet. I still need to replace this water valve rod that runs all the way through here, and it runs through that area of the PTO drive, so I would like to keep that out until I get that put in. And I can't put that in until we do something further into the back of the case. So next time, I think we need to start working on some drive axles. We'll get those cleaned up. We get the bearings put in. We need to manufacture some seals for the mounting bolts of the axle quills, and we've got sprockets and drive chains to do as well. So I would like to get all of that done before I put that water valve rod in, before I put the shifter rod in to shift the gears. So we've got a lot to do yet. So stay tuned, and we'll see what we get to going with. So with that, I'd like to say thanks for watching. Thanks for tuning in to Papa B's Old Time Repair and Restoration. I really, really appreciate all of you people that leave comments. I appreciate your input. And thanks for all the subscribers, all of the new ones. And we're gonna make some progress on this old girl here. So with that, I appreciate you watching. Thanks a lot. We'll see you next time.